Lulia. I'm trying to figure out how to say this, and Woodley's going to have to step in and save me on this, as we have on our Sense Arena VR feature interview of the week on In Goal Radio, the podcast, Anders Nilsson, former National Hockey League KHLer, and just recently hung up his blades, and he is from Luleå. Did you just like roll out the L? Like, I can't roll my L's. So Woody, give me your best impression or advice on how to say Luleå.
Luleå? I don't know. And I thought when Anders was
know better than I am.
When Anders was saying it, it was like, I thought he had an O at the end of it. And this is the funny thing. I'll say it in front of you. I'll make an attempt. But I was so self-conscious about it when I was talking to Anders. I just went like full North American. Luleå. Like I couldn't even
like Siri.
I didn't.
You were like Siri.
I was. I didn't want to get it wrong. I was embarrassed by my. I thought the attempt at getting it right might be worse than just totally Americanizing it or North Americanizing it. It reminds me of going to Sweden. My first training camp with the Vancouver Canucks as a reporter was in Sweden. It was Daniel and Henrik Sedin's first training camp. They're from Örnsköldsvik.
Yeah.
Something that I don't know if I'm butchering it again. Everyone, the Swedish reporters, got to meet them, and I remember they all just said, "Just call it Ovik," and so it was Ovik from there. Sometimes you got to find that bailout.
I think Forsberg's from there too.
He is.
So that's where that first came on the radar. Yeah, it's a difficult Luleå. That's what I'm going to go with. But he's a great guy, and I can't wait for everybody to hear this conversation. And it is a legitimate conversation, not an interview. Sometimes we get into interviews because that's the business that we're in, but also because of the connections that Kevin Woodley and David Hutchison have over at In Goal Magazine. We have these great conversations where it's just fly on the wall. And that's what I felt like when I listened to the Anders Nilsson discussion. And we'll also check in with Cam over at the Hockey Shop with our gear segment, the Hockey Shop, source for sports theory, thehockeyshop.com, presenting In Goal Radio, the podcast. And they're busy going through some stuff. And we don't talk a lot of Vaughn on this podcast, but that's our focus today.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the Vaughn V9, which is not a new line, but we've got some new, actually old graphics on this version. So I guess
they call it retro.
I believe that's what the kids call it, retro. Although I think me and Cam got into a little argument about what the proper phrasing was as we get into the year segment. But a reminder that this gear we're going to discuss today is on the rack, on the shelf. You can find it for yourself and get the right sizing at thehockeyshop.com. You can call Cam, get all the different specs. And as well as all, like as this new stuff comes in and comes out of the box and goes on the wall, a reminder that the Back to Hockey sale still lingers. A lot of those door crashers are gone that we talked about, 2-for-1 sticks, 50% off a couple different models of pads. Actually, I think there might be some Warrior G4 left there. But make sure you check them out at thehockeyshop.com. Even if the door crashers are dwindling in supply, there is still 20 to 50% off all throughout the department. Whether it's gear from a year or 2 years ago that happens to be your size and you need something fresh, or accessories, whether it's a dangler. I know Darren probably wants to get a dangler for me and Hutch, so we all wear it. Mm-hmm. Neck protection, jocks. We talked about the Brian's jock. There's a ton of stuff on sale right now at thehockeyshop.com, so make sure you check them out.
You know what I need? And I ran into this week, and Las Vegas is an amazing place to live and work and raise your kids and be active. And we have a great Friday night skate, and I get invited to a couple of other higher profile skates because they need goalies. But what we don't really have is one of those hockey shop outlets, those go-to places where if you have an issue with your gear, you know that you can get it done promptly and correctly. And I did the old blade popped out of my skate this week. Took a puck off the bottom of the skate and out it went. And it broke. So now I need a new blade, but there's half the blade is still in the little socket. I need somebody that can fix it.
I
just don't
Cecil.
have that. I need Cecil. And I was thinking, I have everything I want in life right here, but I don't have a Cecil. And you kind of are awoken to that moment where you miss your local, like the hockey shop, thehockeyshop.com, Cam and Company, where you can just walk in and go and get it done.
And, that's the thing. It's a good reminder because not only do they have all your blade needs, all your sharpening needs, Cecil, the master tech back there, making sure that your blades are profiled just how you want them, but they've got all those, right? Like custom goalie profile, custom radiuses, lots of different options for aftermarket steel. You're right. It's not just about having, sort of access to a store. It's having access to a store that knows how to find things that will fit your game, maybe even improve your game and do repairs as well, not just on steel that's stuck in a blade, but pads, torn, straps, custom modifications. They do it all at the Hockey Shop and thehockeyshop.com. So we are blessed. It is my backyard. If I have those problems, Darren, I get to pop on by. But a reminder to everyone else, even if it's out of area, if you've got some of those needs, make sure you reach out to them and see if they can help you out.
So give me an idea, because now I have to go and I have to find somebody to fix the skate. But then when they put in the new steel, I'm just used to like giving a couple of exchanges and what do you like? And I get these things profiled. And I'm not sure, like this is where I'm, does the person know as much behind the counter where I'm going to go to as I do? Maybe I might know more, and I don't know a lot about this stuff.
I can think of a locker room as opposed to maybe a retail outlet where you might be able to head due to your employment. That might be a better option for you.
I was trying to avoid that. Like, I don't want to be that guy to go and go, hey, buddy, can I get, I don't want to use names, but what do you think? Can I get this done? I want to avoid being that guy, but I might not be able to. Might have to go down that path.
It's a good, we have a guy here. I'm not going to name names, but for years was famous for just sort of showing up with his skates at the rink as a media guy. Yeah.
Seriously?
John McKeechie. Keech is a legend in this market, and everybody loved him, but we all kind of like, you're like, oh yeah, like, but man, when you go back as far as Keech does with Patty O'Neill, the trainer here, it's just no big deal. Yeah. But the rest of us just kind of, maybe I was partially just jealous, but I can understand that. Listen, if you've got any questions before you go in, I know this guy at the hockey shop named Cam who can put you onto this guy named Cecil that can probably, with a quick exchange of text messages and a photo, figure out how hard it's going to be to get the broken steel out and what you should be looking at for new steel. Because as much as we talk about these custom radiuses and all these things that we do, like remember when we had the Bauer skate, the new Bauer Pro line comes with a custom goalie specific radius on it. It does create sometimes a bit of a different feel, a bit of a different pitch. And, as much as we know generally for goaltenders, these are beneficial for specific reasons, it can be a bit of a different feel. Like for me, going from a CCM, which is a neutral profile or less pitched forward, to a Bauer, which is a more forward pitch, like that takes some getting used to. And so it depends on your situation, Darren. If you're flying right into one of those high profile skates with some high level shooters, you might not want to have your blades changed right before in a way that could lead to, I've done this myself, the odd toe pick and face plant, because it's so much more forward pitched. You feel like you're going down a ski ramp about to do the long jump at the Olympics.
What you just mixed up like Winter Olympics and Summer Olympics?
Well, I'm trying to make...
That was impressive.
I'm all over the map. You must be upside down after flying back from Japan. Like, is it nighttime? Is it daytime? Your body, your brain don't know. I'm trying to make everybody comfortable here by just mixing metaphors everywhere.
Well, I am appreciative, and I'm gonna follow up on that with Cam and Cecil and see if I can get just a bit of knowledge before I take it in and get it done. And that way I've got a foundation there. And the hockey shop, source for sports Surrey, thehockeyshop.com. What an amazing luxury for people in the Lower Mainland.
Absolutely. And so let's go check them out right now. And speaking of luxuries, you don't have to just buy a Vaughn V9 now. You have the choice of some cool retro graphics. Remember the icebergs? Remember the swirls? Cam's going to fill us in now on how we can get that on a modern pad. Welcome back to the Hockey Shop Source for Sports. I'm in Goalie Utopia with Cam Matwiv, and I am surrounded by what I got to admit is some pretty damn stylish Vaughn gear. It may be Friday or Saturday, or frankly, who knows when you're going to watch this, but it is a throwback Thursday as we record. And so appropriately, we are surrounded with some styles that someone of my vintage might recognize a little more than some of you younger goaltenders. A little Vaughn throwback here. Cam, V9, tell me what I'm looking at. Tell me, we can see the styles. Walk me first through all the different graphic options, and then tell me what this V9 set is about in terms of the specs.
So what we've done, we brought back some of their older graphic packages that we have seen in the past. Not limited to Iceberg, Pulse, Swirl, and then we do have a vintage pad as well. It's just there was too many pads to bring out.
You lazy son of a gun.
Easy. Keep it PG.
All right. Okay. So we've seen the graphics, which many of you have seen. Like we saw, Charlie Lindgren was wearing a couple of years ago, was wearing an Iceberg style graphic. I think when I think of Iceberg, I think of Cam Ward and the Carolina Hurricanes.
Jimmy Howard in Detroit.
Yeah. So some classic goalies, several of which aren't in the league anymore, which tells you it's vintage.
Yes.
Well, I love the look. Now tell me about the pad it's been put on. As much as the graphic is retro, there's some nice modern elements to this pad. Like right away, I'm looking over at that graphic. I'm like, but there's a nice sliding material on the inside edge. So walk me through some of the specs on this line. It is a V9. Are there anything unique to the retro graphics in terms of the pads themselves?
So this is your stock V9 pad. You still are getting their Primo slide surface, which is great. Their standard Velcro strapping in the back, so a nice modern day upgrade, that's for sure. We went with just a standard toe tie as opposed to the bungees, just a little bit more traditional, lining up with the pads, but obviously gives you the ability to switch it out to whatever you want, just in case you do. The majority.
You know what? I'm gonna hold you there. What the irony is, we are seeing more and more of our high level testers in other brands switch out of the elastic and go back to a traditional toe tie.
There might be some science there. I'll let the in-goal guys maybe do an article.
We'll talk about that a little later on. But in the meantime, go back, continue. Vaughn V9.
We have split most of the gloves up. Most of the gloves you are going to find in the XP model, which is their one-piece cuff design. Very, very similar to a CCM 590.
Yeah.
So 60-degree break.
It feels just like a 590.
Very much like it. Nice snappy closure. Lots of skate lace. To again, give that nice absorption for that puck. Stock, standard, V9 blocker. Not too much to say here. We've kind of covered this before, I believe. Nice lightweight blocker. Nice fitting hand. Traditional in terms of its feeling, but very easy in terms of its mobility-wise. Lots of wrist mobility, lots of tilt forward. A couple of the gloves you will find in their stock V9, which is basically the continuation, their two-piece from their older Velocity series themselves. A little bit more of a full hand kind of style closure. You 600 break CCM lovers would like this glove. Again, you're kind of bringing that full hand into close. Nice snappy closure again, as you would normally find for a stock Vaughn glove off the wall.
Gloves a little more, the fingers are kind of a little more curled at the bottom. If you present that to our camera for us, you can see that difference there. Still a double T, but in that case, it looks like you've gone with nylon instead of skate lace.
Yes, just to line it up with the glove, just looked a little bit cleaner in the grand scheme of things.
All right, so folks, we have done the V9 before, so you can go back and check that review if you have any questions. This is just more to update you about how sick you can look in it with all these options available off the rack, ready to go here at the Hockey Shop, at thehockeyshop.com. If you have any questions about the specs, about the sizing, about the fit, about the feel, you know who to call. It's Cam Matwiv. Where can they get you, Cam, with more questions about the Vaughn V9? What do we call it? Is it just like a retro graphic look?
Well, we got the swirl graphic. Again, Iceberg, Pulse, and then Vintage, which is not displayed, but you can see at thehockeyshop.com. You can give me a call, 604-589-8299 or 1-800-567-7790.
I didn't ask for a recap of the graphics. I just asked for you to tell me if they call you, what are they asking for? The Vaughn V9?
Swirl.
Retro?
Swirl.
retro.
Swirl.
You guys call him and figure it out. He's got lots of options here, and I got to say, they all do look really good. Make sure you check them out at thehockeyshop.com for all your Vaughn V9 retro graphic needs.
Swirl.
So coming off Vaughn, I grew up wearing Vaughn. Loved the gloves, and one of my favorite pair of pads ever were Vaughn's. Nothing can compare to the Access. To be quite honest, the CCM Access. If I live in my past, I reflect favorably on Vaughn, but I don't know whether I'll ever leave CCM. To be quite honest, the idea of your favorite Vaughn pad because they've been around for a while and in high profile. What's your favorite graphic? What's your favorite look?
Well, see, I've never really been a Vaughn pad guy in terms of wearing it on the ice, so I can't like do models and things like that. But graphics, 100% going to be Cam Ward, right? Which was an iceberg graphic, I believe, and that's maybe that's I was a big Cam Ward guy, especially early in his career. Big fan of Cam as a goaltender back then, and as a person forever. That was my. I covered that Stanley Cup final for USA Today, which was also a big moment for me personally in my career. And just there's something iconic to me about Cam Ward in that graphic. And I know for most people, when they think of On, it actually goes back earlier to some of those graphics. But for me, Cam was the guy I associated with that iceberg, and so that's why I'm picking that one.
Mine was Bob Essenza when they played for the Winnipeg Jets. I loved that setup, that look, and that really sticks in my mind. But that Cam Ward Stanley Cup, now you've tweaked my memory. That might have been the most difficult travel for media in Stanley Cup final history, and we're talking Carolina and Edmonton, because you couldn't. There was no direct flights there, and it was before the National Hockey League did a charter when there was difficult travel arrangements. And you had to go through all kinds of different stopovers to get from one place to the other during that series.
I covered 2 Stanley Cup finals for USA Today, but I should add a caveat. And one was, I would guess, what was a similarly tough travel, Calgary, Tampa Bay, which was the one previous to this one. But the caveat is, I was the guy in the Canadian city. This was as much as I was honored to be covering it, this was in part a money-saving exercise because it was easier to get me to Calgary and Edmonton from Vancouver than it was to have people fly back and forth, as you said, because it was so difficult. So the team charters would land and they'd have a practice, and the media was racing to catch up, and I was already there. So I covered both of those and stayed in Calgary and stayed in Edmonton. Did not have to experience the nightmare that was travel between the two.
You almost had to do it that way, though, to have somebody on the ground with the teams, because you couldn't physically fly out of Raleigh in time and land in Edmonton before the teams were going to be on the ice or for their availability. At that point, there's not a lot of practicing going on, but just to have their availability. Good for you. That's very cool.
It was a big moment for me. It was kind of early. I'd only been covered the league for a few years, so to sort of have that USA Today byline and in a Stanley Cup final was pretty big. You know what? I just remembered. I'm looking up at the in-goal.
2 Game 7s too, bud.
Yeah,
2 Game 7s.
Yeah, you know what? Neither one of those Game 7s were in the Canadian city, if you recall. So I didn't get the Game 7s.
Right.
Didn't get the Game 7s. May have been the guy who asked Marty Jelena. I remember asking him about the puck that we all thought went in on Nicky Habibulin in Game 6 that would have clinched it. I know. And I remember being the one to ask him, and he's just like, I didn't see it. And we're trying to get this answer out of him. And he just kind of was like, hey, they saw it, I didn't. And I said, what happens if you go home tonight and you see the replay and you see what we see and think it's all in? And he gave a really good answer. But it was kind of one of those moments where you're in this big scrum with all these names who are much bigger than you, and everybody's trying to get the answer and nobody really could. And you ask the question in the right way and you're like, hey, I can do this. So, but hey, listen, I'm looking at the wall here and some of our past covers of the old In-Goal magazine, sort of the digital magazine with the covers on it. I forgot Jimmy Howard. Jimmy Howard's Vaughn setups when he was in Detroit with kind of similar, that sort of similar type graphic with the red along the bottom and white across the top. So, you know what, all due respect to Jimmy, who was an awesome guest for us too after he retired, throw him right in there with Cam Ward as 2 of the guys I associate most commonly with that graphic and love it.
And then you've got Anders Nilsson, who is pretty responsible for an epic setup in his National Hockey League time. I mean, Anders could style it.
Yeah, and I mean, as I said in the interview, you'll hear it up ahead, like he retired with the best setup in the league, right? That Brian's Beast graphic that he had here in Vancouver carried over to the Ottawa Senators. But I'm not going to give it all away here because there's a really cool backstory. Well, people that like dark colored pads might not think it's so cool, but some detail that Anders gives about being in a all dark blue setup here in Vancouver, switching back to white, the role that goalie coaches' opinions played in it, the role that reviewing photos and footage of himself to figure out whether he looked big or small played in it, and why he finished out his career in a set that was very stylish, but was trimmed around the edges in white.
Because of the influence of management and goalie coaches. But
no, it started.
I wonder
listen, it goes back to a coach in Luleå back in his junior days. Includes the coach here in Vancouver, Ian Clark, and some very firm rules about that. But it was his own decision because Ian wasn't in Vancouver. It was his own decision at the end of a season the year before Ian came, looking at photos and then deciding for the World Championships to go to white and winning a World Championships. Now, some of this could all be between the years, but at the end of the day, one of the biggest humans I've ever met that played goal, 6'6", 230-pound Anders Nilsson, and like this guy could be an action hero. He was so ripped, like the Rock type thing, and he felt he looked small. So listen, we'll have to. I don't want to give it all away, but listen to his opinion on it. Is interesting, fascinating at a time when I know there's a lot of people listening going, you guys are full of crap. It makes no difference. The pads are all the same size. This guy played in the show. Let's listen to what he has to say.
Let's set it up. Sense Arena VR bringing us our feature interview on In Goal Radio, the podcast. I was using it the other day. I had it in Japan, but I was using it the other day when I got home. And my daughter, I had to switch it off because she was fishing. Loves the fishing game with it. And then I turned on the Sense Arena VR. She wasn't very happy with me because I basically stole it back. And then, so to get back at me, she recorded me. And I love Sense Arena VR. I look a little dorkish standing in the middle of the front hallway, the entranceway to my house, making blocker saves and looking down, trying to figure out how I missed that last one.
But the price of looking, it's worth it to pay that price. First of all, like,
it's awesome.
Tell her to fire the video our way. We all want to see it here at In Goal and on the In Goal social media channels. We'll hold it over your head. But second of all, like, this is the thing about Sense Arena. I think a lot of people that listen to us talk about it, and we've had all these pros, over the past year that are working with it, that we know, that are sharing their experiences about how it's helped them. I think a lot of people think this is only for the elite. This is only for guys who are playing pro or hope to play pro or top end juniors. And what we've discovered and need to remind people is it's for all of us.
Yes.
It's a cheat code.
It's just fun.
As Hutch's son Matthew says, it's a cheat code for him as a guy who hopes to one day play in the league. It's a cheat code for us beer leaguers. I haven't been on the ice in 17 months. I got my season starting in like 3 weeks. I've finally started to train goalie specific. Shout out Maria Mountain for her great program. I've started to do the work to get the hips going so that I'm not going to be, I have fallen and can't get up guy. I'd like to play more than one period and not have my season end. So I'm doing that work. But somebody said to me, and I'm looking at getting on the ice with a goalie coach just so I can go through some reps and get my feet under me. And somebody said, well, you got to see pucks. Like, how are you going to, like, you got to feel pucks. I'm like, oh, that part. I am not worried about that. I got Sense Arena. So for my hands and tracking, and that's what, like, we don't get as rec leaguers the opportunity to go train very often. This is a pretty extreme step I'm hoping to take here to actually get on the ice with a coach just to get some ice before I have to do it for real. But the reality is most of us don't ever do that as rec leaguers, as adults. A lot of minor hockey kids don't get the opportunity at the lower levels. This is your chance to experience shots, your chance to get a feel for the puck, even if it's just in your head, to see releases, to see pucks, to fight through traffic, all those things, get the hands working. Make sure when you lift the hand to a certain spot where you think the puck is headed, it actually does head there, like you said, Darren, or the low blocker.
Yeah.
How did I miss this? All in the comfort of your living room without having to worry about a couple $100 in ice time and coaching fees. So I gotta, just a reminder to folks, we may tout the work being done by NHL goalies who love Sense Arena, but this is certainly not just for the best of the best. This is for all of us. And as you said, Darren, whether you buy the headset independently and order Sense Arena for it or buy the whole package, either one, it's not like it's just Sense Arena on there. My daughters also like to steal the headset and do a little fishing on there. The odd roller coaster ride. So fun for the whole family, even if you're the only one playing goal.
My glove hand's way better than my blocker hand. I don't know why, but it's the way it is. And I just appreciate being able to play the games. Like you keep track of saves, and I'm always trying to can I go 100% during one? So it's cool. I love it. Sense Arena VR, the proud sponsor and presenter of our feature interview on In Goal Radio, the podcast presented by the Hockey Shop, source for sports Surrey, thehockeyshop.com. This week, chatting with Anders Nilsson, and give us the backstory on he's retired and just recently retired, and not of his own choice because of injury. Give us the backstory on Anders.
Well, I mean, he missed last season entirely. Suffered a concussion his final season 2 seasons ago with the Ottawa Senators, led to some neck problems, and obviously just wasn't getting better. And I think the biggest thing, and we'll hear it from Anders himself, when I reached out to him after seeing his retirement, my biggest concern was, you're kind of sad to see him go, because I really, as you're probably going to hear in this, I really enjoyed my conversations with Anders over the years in the locker rooms. Like, he's a guy that could really just sit down and talk goaltending. And had a real passion for the position, right? And was open to it being like, there were questions in return, right? It wasn't just his way or the highway. Yeah. It was a real dialogue.
You get that sense with him.
Yeah, he was great. And so I'll miss that. But biggest thing was, I just wanted to make sure I know how important his family is. I mean, you remember the famous, it went viral. Remember when he dressed up as Spider-Man and was on the roof for his kid's birthday party? Like, yeah. That's Anders, right? Like, he's just a great person. And so you worried a little bit about the person, because for a guy, as you'll hear from him, like, the struggle was real for a long time. And so just happy, I think, for the most part, he's going to be able to live a normal life. Sad that it won't include those conversations in NHL locker rooms, but not everybody that goes through concussions this severe gets to get back to enjoying the other parts of life on a sort of in a normal mode, in a normal basis. And it sounds like at the very least, that'll be the case with Anders. As for the rest, there was just so many things during his career, so many different things, some personal, some professional, development, great story in here about reverse VH, RVH, and a great lesson. As much as we talk about goalies, always be open-minded to try new things when you get a new voice. This is a great reminder that maybe goalie coaches need to do the same. I'm not going to give it away, but there are some NHL goalie coaches that should have some egg on their face after listening to this one.
I was thinking the exact same thing about being open as an athlete. And when a coach comes to you and says, try this, and it's not really your thing, but you got to be able to try it, that there's an equal responsibility on the instructor or the coach to listen to their athlete and be open. Now, the ultimate choice is the athletes, because they are in control of their own body, but the coach can make a big difference and can sway that. And it comes down to playing time. Boy, that's a heavy tool to wave. But I think it's a two-way street there that we don't often talk about.
Well, and Anders does. I don't want to give it away, but let's hear from Anders now, and let's let him explain to you how he was maybe ahead of the curve, and at least one technique coming to North America from Sweden. So happy to be joined on the podcast, the In Goal Radio podcast by Anders Nilsson. I wish, I got to be honest though, I wish it was under better circumstances, Anders. I wish it was, we were talking about coming back to the National Hockey League. Instead, we're talking about, we're catching up after you announced your retirement last week. So just maybe update us. I know there were some concussion issues. Update our audience on, that decision, how tough it was and how you're feeling, I guess, in terms of maybe not able to play in the NHL anymore. But on a day-to-day basis, or have you gotten to the point where you can at least live a normal life right now in terms of the concussion and getting past things?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm looking forward to this. So, I went public with the announcement here a few days ago that I'm been coming to a point where I have to retire from professional hockey, but at least I'm at the point right now where I can enjoy day-to-day life. I can have a normal day-to-day life with my kids and my family and wife. I know that's not the case for a lot of hockey players that suffers from concussion problems and post-concussion symptoms. But for me, leading up to this, I can't say it was a hard decision because I've been trying to get back on the ice so many times, and every time I've been trying to push myself and start skating or start working out more, I get a setback and I kind of go back to square one. So I would say for me personally, it took me, I would say, almost a year and a half, maybe a year and 3 months before I could go walk in a grocery store without getting symptoms. And when you're at the point when you can't even go in and buy your own groceries without feeling bad, you're nowhere close to being an NHL goalie.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just happy to hear that you're at least now able to do those things. As sad as I am to hear that you won't be able to stop pucks at the National Hockey League level, I'm going to miss the equipment. I'm going to miss you, but I'm going to miss the equipment too. You went out with probably the best set in the league with that Brian's Beast set. I got to say that. As you look back, have you had a chance to reflect as you came to this decision? How hard was it? And when you look back, what's the first sort of things that pop out to you from a memory standpoint of your career in the National Hockey League?
Well, it's a lot of different things that pops out, I guess. I mean, obviously getting drafted by the Islanders and signing the first contract with them, and then getting a chance to play in the first NHL game. That's something that's gonna live in my memories for as long as I live. That's a special moment for sure, and I'm super thankful for the Islanders organization for giving me the chance when I was a young guy. Other than that, I had a lot of ups and downs throughout my NHL career, but I got to see a lot of different cities and play for a lot of different organizations. So it's tough to just pinpoint a few memories. I mean, the first shout out was special, and first win, and all small things. It's a crazy world when you're playing the NHL, and I think it's going to take a little bit longer time for me before everything has kind of been sinking in, I guess.
Well, I'm hopping all over the place here. I don't have a really good order for this, but I got to ask, where I asked you about the NHL memories, but where does 2018 in Denmark rank? I mean, backstopping a World Championships for Sweden and coming home with a gold medal.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's I would say that's up there. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to win the Stanley Cup, but I was able to win the World Championship, and that's obviously the main goal when you play professional sports, and being able to win the gold medal in Denmark at 2018 was something that's super special for me. I mean, for Team Sweden, that whole tournament was super special because we had almost every game was sold out with Swedish fans, even though it was in Denmark. So it was a special tournament, and that we were able to come out on top in that one was special. That's probably, I would say that might be the highlight of my career for sure.
So this is kind of a question I ask every guy, and I'm actually a little embarrassed. When you were in the locker room with the Canucks and all the times I annoyed you with my questions, I never asked this one. How'd you get started? How did Anders Nilsson become a goalie? What made you fall in love with the position?
Yeah, you never asked him that in Vancouver. I guess that's so much else to talk about. It started off in my hometown, Luleå. They had a goalie whose name was a Finnish goalie. His name was Jarmo Myllys. He played for my hometown team for many years, and it was in the mid '90s till early 2000 somewhere. He was a super good goalie. Was super good at handling the puck. He actually scored 2 goals in the Swedish Hockey League at the time, and I was at one of those games where he scored a goal. So it was very entertaining to watch. He was also in some fights. He threw his gloves every now and then. So I mean, I think that's when I kind of fell in love with the position, and I wanted to try to be a goalie when I played hockey. And then maybe after the first or second practice, I felt that I was kind of good at this. I was, feeling that I was able to stop the pucks, and then one thing led to another, and all of a sudden I was playing goal every single practice.
Now we know so much, or we hear so much about sort of this, the Swedish goaltending and the program that they've put in place. You mentioned Luleå, and I probably mispronounced that. I apologize. I can never nail those. But growing up there, at what point did you go from the kid that just wanted to be a goalie and because of Jarmo, to getting a little instruction in your game? Because I'm trying to figure out whether I think you would have predated some of what we now consider, the structure that's in place in Sweden. We've had Linda Blomqvist who coaches now there in Luleå, on In Goal and on the In Goal premium site, talking about sort of how they were part of inventing RVH. But as a young kid growing up, did you have that type of structure, that type of coaching, or was it a lot of just sort of going out there and mimicking the guys you admired?
Yeah, I know for sure. Like when I started playing, I was more mimicking. Like I was watching guys, like the older guys, practice, and then I was trying to do the same thing, and I was watching the pro team, and Jarmo Myllys, the Finnish goal. I was trying to do the same thing as him. So but also I had some goalie coaches at a young age. But if you look back at it now, I mean, I sound old, even though I'm not that old. Like, we were not practicing RVH or not even one pad down. I mean, they were teaching me more old school style goalie when I first started. So I mean, it was kind of when they switched from old school to like the new butterfly style, as they called it. So I was right in the middle there when I started playing, I guess. So it wasn't not even close the same structure as everyone is playing right now. When I first started in that.
Yeah, and 2009, you're drafted by the Islanders. At what point leading up to there, like between the young kid who's just going out there trying to mimic the guys he sees and being drafted by the Islanders, was there a point along that path, Anders, where it's like, hey, this is, like you said, this is something not only am I good at, but this is something I could play. This is something I could do.
I think it was when I played junior hockey in Luleå for the junior team. I kind of felt that I got better and better, and maybe started when I was around 14, 15. I felt that I was good, and I was able to get a chance to play for Team Sweden at the under 16 tournament, and then I felt like, I'm probably pretty good at this when I get a chance to play for Team Sweden, but for me it's always been a goal of mine to be a pro goalie. Ever since I was a kid, like everyone else, I had a dream of playing in NHL, and I had a dream about representing Sweden, when you're young, you don't realize how hard it is and how few people that actually get a chance to live up to that dream. So I was very lucky that I was able to get that far. But I had tremendous support from my hometown team from when I started playing at 5-6 years old all the way up to finally reaching the pro team. But to answer your question, I guess I started realizing that I had a talent for the position when I was around 14, 15 years old, somewhere around there, I guess.
So I got to ask, because by the time I meet you in the National Hockey League, you're 6'6". Were you always the bigger kid, or were there late growth spurts? And I'm kind of curious because we had Jonas Enroth recently on, and obviously a lot of the discussion was about, how he had such a career playing at 5'10". I think a lot of people on the outside assume it's easy when you're bigger, but I know that's not the case. So where did size fit in for you in terms of the coaching and the work you did? Like, was it always something you saw as a positive? Or was there ever a point where it's like, did anybody ever say to you, hey, you might be too big?
No, like I was always a big child. Like even right from birth, I always been like one of the tallest guys in my class in school and all the way growing up. So I didn't have this like going from like having this big jump in height like over a summer or anything like that. And I think that probably helped, because I somewhere I was able to control my motor skills, because if you grow a lot during the summer, you can just you're it's hard to keep track of your arms and legs. But I guess I was lucky to come up through the systems when everyone in the hockey world all of a sudden starts liking taller goalies. I mean, a lot of tall Swedish goalies kind of came up at once. I mean, if you look at me, Markstrom, Hellberg, Lindback, it's a lot of them that kind of just in the span of within 2-3 years of each other. So I never really had anyone telling me that, no, you're too big, you can't play goalie. The first one who ever mentioned something about my height was Ian Clark when he came to Vancouver, who is one of the best, if not the best, goalie coach I ever met throughout my whole career. But he mentioned that I might be too big, and he didn't say it personally. He was more like ideal, like if we're just talking, and he was more like, if the ideal goalie height should be, maybe he said 6'2", 6'3" maximum, because if you get above that, like it's hard to control your feet, it's hard to control your arms, like it's tougher to move around. And he's absolutely right. It's just a law of the physics. But he didn't say it in a negative way that I was, you're too big, you can't play goalie. It was more like, the ideal goalie height for him was maybe 6'2". And I think he's absolutely right about that, because you're still big enough to cover up everything you need in net, but it's easier for you to move around the crease, around the post, around everything. So that was maybe the first time someone mentioned anything about height, but for him it wasn't personally. It was more, we're just talking, and I agreed with him. I think you're absolutely right.
Now, the control you had, because controlling your body was never an issue, as you said, and part of that maybe, like you said, you didn't have any big jumps, growth spurts that we see kids go through that, and it can be really hard to sort of adjust to these suddenly longer limbs. What about other sports? Like the physical, element, the ability to control your body the way you did. Like, did you grow up playing other sports as well? You think that was important if you did?
I played soccer like almost everyone else in Sweden.
Okay.
I played hockey during the winter time, and then I played soccer in the summer. But I wasn't really that good in soccer. So I mean, for me, it was more fun to play hockey because I was better in hockey. And I obviously, when you're better in one sport, you enjoy that sport more. So for me, hockey has always been number one. Soccer was only something I did during the summer because I wasn't able to play hockey at the time. And maybe that was something negative. I never been that good in soccer. I haven't been, I haven't been that good at controlling the ball. So maybe that's something negative with my height. I don't know. Maybe I just have bad feet or something. So I guess I chose the right position and the right sport.
I was just going to say, like, as a hockey goalie, I don't think I could even step foot on a soccer pitch because to me, those goals are just so darn big. I'd run screaming the other way. I don't want nothing to do with anything that has a goal that big behind anyone. Thank you very much.
Yeah, for sure. They're doing a good job. That's for sure.
Now, after drafted, you played a couple more years in Luleå. I'm getting a little better there. Played in the SEL for a couple of years before coming over to North America. First season over here, a little bit of time in Bridgeport, time with the Islanders. What that decision to come over, was that a tough one for you? What made you know you were ready? And what was the hardest part of that transition once you got over here?
I think for me, I had a pretty good season with Luleå, my last season before I came over to North America, and my goal that before I came over was like the last season in Luleå. My goal throughout the whole season was to get a contract and to move over to North America, and I was able to achieve that. But obviously, I came to a very, it was a lot of good goalies in the Islander organization back then. I mean, they had Nabokov, they had I almost forgot that they had Di Pietro, they had Montoya, it was Mikko Koskinen and Kevin Polan. I mean, we had 6 actually. If you look back at it, it's like really good goalies in the organization within 2 teams. My first season. So it's a bit crazy when you look back at it, but it's also a fun memory.
What about on the ice and that smaller rink? What was the toughest? Like, do you remember anything about that adjustment? I mean, it's a while ago, but even having to go back and forth when you went over for World Championships back onto the big ice, was it that big an adjustment, or was just like riding a bike after a couple reps, you're okay on the angles and the feel of everything? What to you was the biggest difference?
I think the first year, the first season when I came over from Europe after playing on a big ice my whole life, I think like the angles are obviously super, like they're very different. So it took a while to get used to the angles, but like the first memory that pops out is I remember that everyone just shot the puck from everywhere. Like,
right.
Even if the puck was in the corner, like in Europe, like people are holding on to the puck and they're passing around. They trying to make an extra move or something. Like in the first couple months in North America and in the American League, I just remember like, I have to be ready all the time because everyone's just firing the puck. But after a while, I realized that's more fun because you're more involved in the game, obviously. So, but I think that was the biggest difference. It was the angles and that everyone shot the puck from everywhere.
I was going to say, and the from everywhere part includes bad angles below the goal line. You'd mentioned sort of when you started, it was a little more old school, and as you went along, like you were coming up as all these new post techniques kind of came into play, both overseas and in the National Hockey League. Like, how important was post integration, whether it was, one pad down or RVH? Like, where was your evolution there?
Yeah, so I like, we were actually a little bit of ahead in Sweden. So I started working with RVH in Sweden a couple seasons before I moved over to North America. So my first season in North America, like almost no one did RVH, and I was doing RVH, and some people were saying to me like, no, you can't do RVH. You have to do 1 pad down. And I said like, no, I've been doing RVH, and they were like, no, you can't do that. That may be work in Europe, but it's not going to work on the small ice in North America. And it was a lot of people who were telling me this. Because it was like, obviously, I think RVH was invented in Sweden, so no one had ever seen it, and they seen it in Europe, and they were saying like, oh, maybe it might work on the big ice, but it's not going to work on the small ice because everyone is firing the puck, everyone is shooting. Their accuracy is much better here, and this and that. So that was a big adjustment going from 1 pad down to RVH, and then trying to go back to 1 pad down, but as evolution went on, like obviously everyone else started doing RVH all the time. So
I was going to say, you probably had to send a few notes out afterwards. I told you so.
Yeah, no, yeah. But it's hard as a young kid. I was 21 at the time to kind of say like, no, I'm not doing one pet. I want to do RVH. But when you have a lot of different people that's trying to, say like, no, RVH works in Europe. It doesn't work in North America. And I've been in North America for 2 or 3 weeks when I'm going to say like, okay, I guess it doesn't work here. So yeah, that's actually funny when you look back at it.
That is, and I'm not surprised because, like you said, we had Linda Blomqvist on and talking about how in Luleå they were at the forefront of that invention of the RVH. So I'm not surprised you had it early. Actually, Jonas Enroth talked about when it started to come in play over here. He went back in the summers and talked to the coaches there so he could try and learn it properly. So that doesn't surprise me at all. Now that theme though, Anders, having a coach tell you to do it one way. And, I'm guessing, especially, New York, and then after you went over to the K and then came back, like Edmonton, St. Louis, Buffalo, Vancouver, Ottawa, every time you change teams, you got a different voice and probably somebody asking you to do something different. What advice, like how did you manage that? Managing your game, but also managing other people's expectations that you would try new things. And this is something kids face a lot these days. They'll have a goalie coach in the summer and then they'll go to a new team, even before pro level, and be asked to do different things. What advice would you give based on your experience with that?
That's a tough one actually, because I felt I was struggling with that myself from going from one team to another, and it's very, very hard when a coach asks you to do one thing and maybe you don't believe in that, but you also feel like, oh, maybe I need to do this to be able to play games. Because if I don't do this, I'm not going to play the game. So that's
right.
A super, super hard question. But obviously, I think you have to be open. You have to be able to talk to your coaches about it and maybe say, hey, I don't feel comfortable with this. I feel this works better for me. What's your opinion of that? Like, I feel I'm not feeling that I'm not feeling comfortable stopping the puck this way. I feel like I'm thinking too much and it's not going to work in a game situation for me. Is it okay if I do this instead? I feel much better at this, or try to have a everything else. Like, I guess try to have a conversation and see where that leads, because it's always hard when you get told, like, if you go to goalie camp and they tell you one thing and then you come to your team and they tell you a complete different thing. You have to feel what works best for you and then be open about it and have a talk about it, have a conversation with your goalie coach, I guess.
Yeah, no doubt. And it is tougher. And I think that's great advice, that it just becomes a conversation as opposed to, but as you know, like you said earlier, sometimes those conversations with some people they're one-way conversations. So the more you can make it a two-way conversation, the better that is. I'm curious, after some time with the Islanders, you head back to the KHL. And this is actually another question I never did have a chance to ask you in the locker room in Vancouver, but that decision to go back to Russia for a year before you came back over with the Oilers, your rights were traded while you were over in the KHL. What went into that? What was the mindset there? And, at a time when the game was becoming increasingly east-west here in the NHL, do you think it helped being in the KHL, where, from what we've been told, it's pass one more time, dust it off and pass again? Like, the patience you needed to play over there, did it help when you came back?
Yeah, for sure. Like I said earlier, like my first impression of playing in North America was like they shot the puck from everywhere, and then I came to KHL and I felt like, oh, you guys never shoot the puck. Like, you're wide open in the slot, and you're passing. Like, what's going on? Like, so that was a big transition coming to KHL. Like, it probably took me a full month, like 4 weeks, before I was even somewhere good in practices, because they were passing so much. Like, I was able to, my mindset was like I was locked in on the shooter, and like, oh, he's going to shoot, but he didn't shoot. He was passing, so they had a wide open net. So I had to work obviously a lot on my patience in the game and on my feet and stuff like that. But if I go back to why I wanted to go to the KHL, was I felt like I didn't take the steps that I wanted in my in my career, I felt like I was kind of standing still in my development. Over the 3 years in Islanders, they wanted me to play in another year in Bridgeport in the American League, and I felt like no, I wasn't taking the steps me personally I wanted to. So that's why I first of all decided to go to KHL and try something new. And when I came there, I was lucky. Like, I was super lucky to have a really good goalie coach. I had a Finnish goalie coach that put in all his time and heart and effort to for his goalies, and that's why I was able to have such a good season as I had in KHL, and eventually being able to come back to North America and Oilers.
And with all due respect to the Islanders at the time, I'm guessing you probably had more goalie coaching support in the KHL that year and than you might have had at times with the Islanders. Because if I remember correctly, I'm not even sure they had a full-time guy throughout your time there. They were one of the last teams to sort of commit to, full-time and a guy in the AHL and a little more resources.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that was one of the issues I felt they had a lot of different goalie coaches and I had a really good relationship with all of them. But I felt for me I needed the support every day. I needed someone to be at every game. I needed someone to be at every morning skate. And at the time they had goalie coaches coming in for maybe 2 weeks at a time or 1 week at a time, and then it was gone for 2 or 3, 4 weeks. And for me, for my personal development, I felt like I needed a guy there every day. So for me to get that in Russia and in KHL, and also with a really good Finnish goalie coach, that was a big part of why I was able to develop so much as a goalie that season in Russia.
And did you go over with a lot of confidence? Because I sort of forgot, heading over to the KHL, you were coming off in 2014, really good run at the World Championships. I think it was Belarus. You guys won a bronze, but 937 save percentage. You were the guy, played 9 starts. How did that help coming off all that back and forth in the island to go over and have a tournament like that? Did it sort of give you some confidence?
Yeah, for sure. I think it gave me a lot of confidence, that to kind of prove to myself that I was able to play, that I could play good hockey and play good hockey consistently throughout the whole tournament. And that tournament obviously led up to me to be able to sign a contract with Akbars Kazan, because maybe if I didn't have that tournament, that maybe would not have been giving a contract in the KHL and or with such a good team and organization as Kazan is. So that tournament obviously not only gave me some confidence, I think that tournament also gave me the contract with that team. So it was that World Championship in specific that led to a lot of positive stuff. If I look back at my career, for sure.
Okay, you come back in Edmonton and St. Louis the first year, Buffalo for a year with Robin Lehner, and then into Vancouver, where you were with Jacob Markstrom. Did you enjoy the times with fellow Swedes? When you played with Robin, were those guys you had relationships? You had mentioned some of the other names, Anders Lindback, that generation of, there was, like you said, an entire generation of 6'5", 6'6" successful Swedish goaltenders. Say that 5 times fast. And did you have relationships with them over there? Did you guys train together, national teams together? And then I know with Markstrom, you played on a World Junior team. Was it somehow easier, better, or more enjoyable when you were with them as playing partners in the National League?
Yeah, obviously both with Robin and Jacob. I mean, we're same age. I've been playing with both of them in the national team when we were younger and growing up, and we were playing against each other as well. But we lived so far apart from each other in Sweden. I live up north and they live further south. So it's not like we see each other every day or see each other during the summers. But the hockey world is small, so everyone kind of know everyone, and especially when you're a Swede, you kind of have a tendency of hanging out more when you play on the same team. So it was obviously a lot of fun to play and be able to have a Swedish goalie partner, and both me and Jacob and me and Rob, and we had super good relationships when we played together, and we were able to have those kind of relationships that, like, even if the other one is playing good, we were happy for each other. And when you get to that point, like when you're happy for one another and like truly are, like, that's a nice feeling to have as a goalie. And that usually you start performing better on the ice when you feel that you have the partner had your back.
Now, your first year here in Vancouver, you had a rather, like, it was a great look. It was the dark blue CCM set, and it was striking. But you went to the World Championships and you tried something lighter. Now, we're going to piss off some people that believe in dark gear here, but can you walk me through the process that led Anders Nilsson? And I know there's Ian plays a role here because there's some rules about colors once he arrived in Vancouver too, but he wouldn't have been here that first year. What was that? You went from a dark gear to a light guy. What was that process like for you?
So actually, if you go back to my last season with Luleå, like the pro season in Luleå, I had a head coach and a goalie coach that had exactly the same rules as Ian Clark. Like, you need to play with white gear, or at least the outline has to be white, because you look bigger. You can't have dark sets. Like, the head coach in Luleå actually told me, like, if you come here with black pads, I'm not going to play you.
Wow.
So since then, I usually had lighter gear, and then all of a sudden I signed in Vancouver, and I was like, I've been playing with white gear almost throughout my whole pro career, and I'm like, okay, I want to switch it up. I want to try a dark set. So that's why I made the all blue and a little bit of green, a touch of green, on the set in my first year with Vancouver. But obviously that season wasn't the way I wanted it to go, and my performance on the ice, and I wasn't playing as good as I wanted. And as a goalie, you look at a lot of small things, and I thought like, it has to be the dark set. So that's why I switched it up for the Worlds, and then all of a sudden you go on and I have a good tournament with Team Sweden in a light color set, like in almost a white set of pads and gloves with Team Sweden. And then Ian Clark comes in over the summer, and he says pretty much the same thing as they said to me in Luleå, like, you need to have the outline white because you look bigger. And I totally agree on that. Like, if you want to look as big as possible in net, you need to have a white outline or a very, very light color on your pads and gloves.
Well, we'll get to the set you came back with in that second year in a second, but I did want to ask you, when you looked back on that first season in Vancouver, looked at film, looked at pictures, like, did you feel like you looked small? Because it's kind of hard for me to think of Anders Nilsson looking small at 6'6", and but when you looked at the gear, did you feel like you were smaller wearing all the dark blue gear?
Yeah, I think so. Like, when I look at myself, and if I look at the game video or something from that season, I felt like I looked skinnier, especially if you look at the home jerseys with the dark blue jersey and the dark blue pads. It's a lot of dark, and I think you see more net. I can't remember how I felt on the ice. I don't think I felt small, because if I would have felt small, I would have changed it right away during mid-season.
Right.
But looking back at it now, I definitely feel like I looked skinnier on the ice, and you saw more holes on like 7. You see the 7-hole more obviously, and you see the 5-hole looks bigger, and small stuff like that. But I know a lot of goalies that are a huge fan of dark sets, but me personally, I didn't have a good season in it, and so that's why I switched after one year.
Okay, well, I've taken up more time here than I promised I would, Anders, but I do got to ask one more. The B set, because we've written the story, and so some people will know this one already, but for any of our audience that hasn't heard it, the decision to go with that graphic, that second year in Vancouver, and then both your seasons in Ottawa, and the history you have with that old design, that old Brian set. Can you just share that story with our audience?
Yeah, for sure. It's like when I think I was around 12 or 13 years old, somewhere around there. I was able to get over a pair of Brian Spieth's pads, and they had that graphic on them. And over the summer, my mom found them in their summer cabin, and she took a picture of it and sent it to me like, "Oh, do you remember these pads?" And I said to myself, "Wow, I have to make because I was switching to Brian's at the time. I'm like, oh, I have to make a pair of pads with this graphics on it." So that's kind of how that graphics came back in the picture. And I'm super happy the way it turned out. Like when I first saw them, I'm like, wow, this is actually better than the original.
And like I said, you ended up retiring with the nicest set. Like that was the best set in the league for the years you wore it. That was an awesome set.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, Brian does a great job with their graphics, and I mean, I think that these graphics is either you love it or you hate it. I mean, some people, like even some teammates, they say like, oh, they look awful, but a lot of them like them. And I think it's one of those things like either you love it or you hate it. But me personally, I liked it, so that's why I continued with it.
Do you still have like the pads your mom found? Do you still have them, or did you?
Yeah, they're still there. As far as I know, unless they tossed it out. But I don't think they have. I think they're still in cabin.
Okay, listen, I said I had one last one, and I screwed up. I have one more, and Darren Millard, our host, is going to be laughing his ass off right now because I always have one more. I forgot to ask you about 2016 I think it was in Buffalo, yeah, with the Sabres at the time. The decision to add the pride flag to the mask. You're the first one in the NHL to, go out of your way to sort of express that support for that community. And I wanted to make sure I included this in the interview. Why was that important to you?
No, for me, it wasn't a big thing. Like for me, it was more I wanted to support some friends that I had or had that is homosexual, and I always wanted to. I just wanted to support them in one way, and I felt like a small thing for me to do was just to put the price flag on the helmet, and I was never expecting it to be such a big thing and blow up in media and all that sort of stuff. But obviously, it was necessary, and I'm happy for all the positive support that I got from both teammates, organization, and the whole league. For me, it was I never expected it to be such a big thing, but I'm happy I put it there. If I only would have knew, I would have done it much earlier in my career. But just to see where we are now, like a player come out this summer and saying that he's gay and he wants to continue his dream to play in NHL, that just makes me happy, and I think we can. I'm hoping that we can see more and more players that comes out and hopefully eventually reaches the NHL as well.
Well, I think, like you said, it's good on you because you didn't do it to make a statement, but you quickly realized that it was important for other people to see there was support there. So. At a time when nobody else was doing it, just wanted to make sure that we mentioned that and thanked you for it because it meant a lot to a lot of people as you discovered after doing it. So and it becomes a part of your career. What's next? What have you thought? Like, do you want to stay involved in the game? I guess health will depend. Do you see yourself as a goalie coach at any point, or are you just going to kick back and enjoy some family time for a while?
No, like I obviously like I want to stay involved in the hockey community somehow. I haven't coming to a point when I know exactly what I want to do, but I just know that I wanted to continue in the hockey community somehow, whether it's as a goalie coach or working in TV or being a scout or agent, like you can be so many different things. I just know I want to be a part in the hockey world and working with hockey somehow. I'm not ready to let go of the game of hockey. I love it too much. I want to be involved somehow, but I think I'm gonna let everything sink in and then see what happens here in the fall and winter and next couple of years. But I'm hoping that I can continue to work in the game somehow and helping other players and goalies in some way.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because the game's better with Anders Nilsson around it. Gonna miss you in the NHL, so not happy about that, but I'm glad to hear that you're going to be around, and that also gives me an excuse down the road to hit you up for one more interview at some point and bug you again. You can't escape me that easily, Anders. So congratulations on a great career. As much as you didn't want it to end under these circumstances, I'm so happy to hear that you're, doing it for the right reasons and that you're going to be okay in terms of health and family. So thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me. It was super nice to talk to you again. So take care of you and your family. So nice to hear from you.
VH, RVH. At first, when he was talking about RVH, I thought I was not hearing it properly. I thought he was talking about VH in the sense that he was ahead of the curve on that. But being in the RVH, I could see how that would raise some eyebrows in North America at the time. But when he was told, like, it's not going to work in the small rink, nowadays, you're like, what?
Can you imagine? And of course, we know if you're an in-goal premium member, you've read the story probably. And if you haven't, make sure you go through the archives. It was one of the first ones we did. Linda Blomqvist from Luleå, where she's a goalie coach, one of the goalie coaches there, talking about how they'd kind of invented, for lack of a better term, in Sweden, as Anders said, they were ahead of the curve on RVH. And so here's a guy that learns it over there, comes to North America, is pretty much told not to do it and it won't work. And as he said, he's 21, 22 years old. He can't exactly tell the goalie coach, hey, this will work. And now we're a decade later and everybody does it. Quick won the cup the following season with it, and that's when it took off. I gotta think if you were the coaches that were telling him with the Islanders organization at the time, sorry, this isn't going to work, the next few years would have been a little tough to be like, yeah, we could have been ahead of the curve, but we told them, you know what I mean? It happens. I get it, but it's just a great example, a good reminder. We always talk about goalies be open to new ideas. And that applies to you goalie coaches too.
Yeah. And just don't say no because you're not familiar with it.
Learn it.
Put some thought into it and research it. And then if you come back and go, it's not going to work, well, then you've got a little bit of backing to your argument. A lot of fun. I know you guys talked about it, but he sort of strikes me as a guy that'd be a great commentator.
Yeah. And it's funny. He was nervous about his English because he's been back in northern Sweden in Luleå for over a year now, and he says, all the things that like when you're playing in North America, you're just speaking English every day, right? And yeah, having been to Stockholm, I was amazed at how many and how well, like everyone spoke it and so well. But he's like, when you don't use it every day, when you're back home and you're speaking Swedish all the time, he was legitimately nervous about how he'd come off. And obviously there was no problems there. It was like riding a bike and it came back. So whether it's back home or over here, the way he thinks the game, the way he approaches the game, I'm with you, Darren. I think he'd be a great voice. And whether it's coaching or commentating or he gets into management, I'm just, like I said, happy that he's in a state where the next step is going to include those options and lots of family time in the meantime. And if he finds his way back into the game in whatever form, I'll be happy because it means we'll have more of these types of conversations. And I always enjoy them with Anders.
I feel bad because I haven't let, I've been really, really neglectful of David Hutchison during this episode, and I haven't let him talk at all.
Yeah, he's kind of been quiet, eh?
Yeah, he has been very quiet, but he's not here. How's he doing up there?
Well, this is a good segue to some of the content we've got coming up at In-Goal Premium. David is at the Net 360 goalie camp in Kelowna right now with his son, Matthew, but also on the ice with the goalies, getting footage, getting video. Some great stuff at that camp put on by the Alpha Hockey Agency and Ray Petkow, the agent, Adam Francilia, the trainer. We've got some stuff on and off the ice with A-Fran coming up. How about this? How about Mike Smith with a puck handling clinic and how-to and several different tips all mic'd up, all caught on camera, and all coming to In-Goal Premium in a couple of weeks. How about goalies with lasers attached to them as a way to sort of monitor their tracking ability? I'm leaving it at that, Darren. Waiting on permission to share. We're just going to tease it like that. There's a lot of cool stuff coming, and it's all because Hutch has been busting his ass up in Kelowna all week. Multiple sheets of ice, chasing guys on both sides of two rinks with cameras and microphones. Go, 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 go. He hasn't stopped. I'm not there with him. I've left him on his own completely, and he's working his butt off to bring us some fantastic content in the coming weeks.
Yeah, what do you think is most important when you're a good puck handler, like a Marty Turco, Marty Berger, Ron Hextall, Mike Smith, Nedeljkovic? Is it because there's parts of it where you have strong hands, you got to have strong forearms, you got to have great coordination. I'm wondering what if there's a commonality between all of them. Is it the hands where you're just able to grip and rip more? What do you think is there a secret?
I think there's probably a combination of all, and I haven't seen the footage, so I'm kind of curious myself to see if Mike Smith can turn me into even an average puck handler. I think my beer league team prefers it like they would, if they could, they'd tie me up like Millhouse to the net and couldn't get out of there. I mean, no shortage of strength for Mike Smith, but I think there's technique in terms of how you shoot it. And at the end of the day, it's all about making the right decisions and processing reads and forechecks. Not just in terms of being able to see what's coming and make the right choice, but how do we get out of the net? Where do we receive the puck? Where do we set ourselves up? How do we turn our feet so that we have options, so that we don't put ourselves in a situation where if the option we first thought was there isn't because the forechecks closed it off or they've peeled off with your defenseman, that you don't have to, you have a bail, you have a plan B, you have a plan C, and you have access to it because of the way you're pointed up ice, the way your skates are open, the way there's so many little details. And I'm just excited that one of the best in the game is going to share some of the keys with us and with our membership at In-Goal Premium. So if you're not a subscriber already, get on that because there's lots of good stuff coming. And speaking of which, and speaking of puck handling, coming up, I think it'll be this weekend. We'll have it up. Our second if not this weekend, it'll be up next week. Our second in the video series from Hockey Canada. We did the 1 hour with Roberto Luongo, the Q&A that was loaded with great tidbits. Well, this time it's a coaches panel. Includes Joe Johnson, who's worked with the national women team, Dustin Schwartz of the Edmonton Oilers, Dan Stewart, who is the St. Louis Blues development goalie coach, and Andre Tournier, who is now the head coach of the Arizona Coyotes. And I got to say, keep your eyes out for this one because I was like, I'm the moderator, and that's why we have access to it because I did the moderating for Hockey Canada, and they agreed that we could share it with premium members. I saw that we had a head coach on the panel, and I was like, why are we doing this? That was my question, and I was nervous about it. He was phenomenal, and talking about his history as an assistant coach under Patrick Waugh, how they would change the penalty kill focus depending on which goalie was in net that night and their strengths and weaknesses. Varlamov, super mobile. Jaguar, more everything come at me in straight lines. Some great anecdotes. Again, talking about goalies and goalie coaches and, that relationship and practice sucks and how do we make it better. Some great advice on that. And to bring it back to the stick handling, which is how I got off on this tangent, some great talk from Dan Stewart and some other coaches about how we just don't give goalies enough encouragement, time to work on it, and sort of openness or like, you can do this, go for it in games at a young age to handle the puck, and how that puts them behind the 8 ball and forces them to sort of learn it all on their own. We've heard it from Brodeur and Nedeljkovic. Anytime the play was at the other end of the ice and I had some quiet time, I would handle a puck. I would work on it. Well, according to this coaches panel, some pretty good names think that maybe we shouldn't leave it at that. Maybe we should be helping them work on it. So some great thoughts, and it's all going to be coming to ingoalmag.com for our In-Goal Premium membership.
Between that and Mike Smith, I think that we might not just have up-and-comers. We might not just have prospects. We might not just have beer leaguers, but also current National Hockey Leaguers. Just trying to get a little bit of the secret sauce behind what Mike Smith or the coaches think. about handling the puck. Good job.
Well, like from what I understand here, it started with Mike working with 2 of the younger goaltenders at the camp, but at least one other pro saw what was going on and wanted to be a part of the audience and came down to check it out. And speaking of what's coming up next at In Goal Magazine, Hutch has also, for the podcast, got a great interview with Zane McIntyre that will run, and he's got a great backstory. And just a fascinating guy as well. And I've already recorded one with Drew McIntyre, the new goaltending coach of the Manitoba Moose, who just retired this past spring and has tons of great stories that I can't wait to share. So we got great content coming up at ingoalmag.com, but also here on the In Goal Radio podcast, mostly thanks to Hutch and his hard work up in Kelowna this week.
Drew's an awesome guy. Very, very cool dude. Having an opportunity to cross paths with him in the past. And you're right, Zane has a wild backstory that you'll just be curious. You'll be sucked into it because you'll be sitting there going, "Really? Wow." May not be in that terms, but maybe there might be a couple of other adjectives thrown in. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. We'll get back with Hutch when he decompresses from the interior of BC, and hope that he's having fun up there. I hope that you enjoyed this episode, and we can't wait to hear your reaction. We got a couple of great notes over the last couple of weeks. Keep them coming. The interaction, the correspondence with us at In Goal Radio, the podcast, In Goal Magazine, to Kevin Woodley or David Hutchison or myself, or let us know what you think of Cam and that zaniness over at the Hockey Shop, thehockeyshop.com. And thanks to Sense Arena for the feature interview presentation. Stay safe, be well, and training camps are right around the corner as we wind our way through 2021 and this wonderful world of goaltending.